It ain't really on. It's not very loud.
Try it out.
Hello? That does not sound very loud. What about this one? This one doesn't sound...
Matt, hold on.
Everybody want to have a meeting? The mics aren't working. The mics aren't working. Is it working now? Is it working now? Can you hear it? Turn it up. Where? Oh.
He's going upstairs right now.
All right, because I want to start.
There we go.
I can talk loud.
Test it out.
Testing. Testing. Can anybody hear me now? Can you hear me?
It's that one.
Okay, can you hear me? Come on, Matt.
There.
All right. Hey, let's have a meeting. Everybody ready? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Fourth Dimension group of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Susan Coe, and I'm going to be your alcoholic chairperson for this evening. Please help me open the meeting with a moment of silence, followed by the Serenity Prayer. Serenity Prayer. God, grant me serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. For our singleness of purpose, this is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. We're glad you all are here, especially the newcomers, in keeping with our singleness of purpose and our third tradition, which states the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. We ask all that who participate to confine their discussion to problems with alcohol. Okay, is there anybody present for their first meeting or in their first 30 days? This is not meant to embarrass you. This is just so that we can get to know you better. Please stand and say your name. Welcome, Lisa. Is there anybody else? Okay. Is there anybody here from out of town? All right. I've asked Susie to read the preamble.
Hi, I'm Susie. I'm an alcoholic. The Alcoholics Anonymous Preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help each other, to help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety.
Thank you, Susie. And I've asked Barbara to read the steps. Can't even say it.
Hi, I'm Barbara, and I'm an alcoholic. Here are the steps. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly ask Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9. Made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10. Continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. If you could please silence your cell phones at this time. Also, we ask that if you could please refrain from getting up and down during the speakers, but if you must, please do so quietly. If you see a butt out there, please anonymously pick it up and put it in the right receptacle. If you're going to smoke, see? I was ahead. We ask that you please be away from the buildings. Please be respectful that we are guests of the church. Also, if you have any announcements in between speakers, please see our group secretary. Group secretary, please raise your hand. Matt. We have a home group member, and please help me welcome Ed. He's our 10-minute speaker.
I'm Ed, and I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is January 10th of this year. Next Tuesday will be 6 months for me. I wasn't expecting to do this tonight. I just kind of got stuck into it, so please forgive me if I'm nervous or stammering or any of that. So, where to start? I grew up in a household, kind of upper middle class over in Tampa, originally by way of Winter Park, Orlando. My father owned his own business. My mom was a sales and marketing director for a large home builder out here. And growing up, I grew up in a household that was filled with alcohol. I don't even remember this, but my dad used to dip my binky in beer and whiskey or vodka or whatever was available. So I think that qualifies as my first drink. I was probably like not even 18 months old, and I'm hammered. And but growing up, it was a common occurrence in my house for to see my parents drunk or drinking or drugging. You know, I didn't actually witness them drugging, but you know, behind closed doors, you can't hide the smell. And but. After my parents got divorced, my mom started dating a couple guys. My dad kind of secluded himself a little bit. He was heartbroken. And one of the first actual times I remember getting drunk, it was a 4th of July party, actually. We were at one of my mom's boyfriend's house. He was very well off. It was a big property, almost like a compound type spread. And they told me that I could have like 1 or 2 drinks. I'm probably like 13 years old. Well, I kind of quietly sipped those 1 or 2 drinks and turned them 1 or 2 drinks into like 11 or 12 drinks. And I remember falling asleep. The guy had a theater room in his house. We were watching like Independence Day or one of those movies. And I passed out and I had to be carried to the car. I remember waking up in the car. I remember making a mess of the car. I remember making a mess of the house. And I remember feeling absolutely terrible the next day, but absolutely ready to do it again. That was one of the first signs that I was an alcoholic. And I can realize that now because, 13 years old, who does that but us? And, then I went to, throughout middle school, I didn't really drink that much. It was kind of just a rare occasion. My dad had a big liquor cabinet in our house, and I thought I was smart enough to be able to replace the clear liquids with water. That didn't work. He was too drunk to care. My punishments were go to your room for the night, and then about an hour after that, he'd be like, "What are you doing hiding out in your room?" And so I ended up going to 4 high schools in 4 years. And so I was always moving around. I was always the new guy. My mom ended up moving halfway across the country to marry some guy that we never even knew, and lived in Las Vegas, Arizona, Utah, all those places. And that's when things started getting really bad for me. I felt that she had ruined my football career. I felt that she had ruined me, having me to move around again all this time. And I was really kind of resentful for it. I didn't speak to her for about 5 years, me or my sister. And always being the new guy, I kind of was like quiet and secluded, and a lot of the guys hated me, and I got a lot of attention from being the new guy. And I always knew where the party was, though. I always knew how to get alcohol or whatever. And I thought it worked out into my favor, but really it only fed into this disease. I hung out with a much older crowd. I remember being a freshman or a sophomore at a USF fraternity party. And back in the day, one of my favorite drinks was 151, just straight up. Just kick it back and suck it up. And my buddy Mike, he's like, hey, we just cracked open a bottle of 151. You want to do a shot? I'm like, yeah, why not? I'm only like 15, 16 years old with a bunch of 21, 22-year-olds. And I go and kick back the shot, and this was like my initiation into the group. It was a thing of dish soap. And after that, they gave me the real stuff, and it was partied on. And the party never really ended. I joined the military because I was just a can't get right. My dad got tired of me stealing from him and lying to him and all that stuff. And I moved around a lot. I joined the military thinking that this was going to be the good thing for me. And ended up just, if anybody's not familiar with today's military, it's just a bunch of drinking and smoking all that synthetic stuff and doing all that stuff. And that's not everybody, but for the good majority of us new guys that get sent to places like Schofield Barracks, Hawaii, yeah, it's a lot of trouble, actually. And so I ended up getting discharged from the military, and I wound up back in Tampa. And I was just so depressed and upset with myself for getting kicked out for the circumstances I was released for. And a short time after that, I found myself homeless again, bouncing from place to place, living in, dating girls just because they had houses and stuff like that, and I could crash at their place. And none of that ever seemed to work out. Wonder why. But it came to a point when I realized that, all this moving around and not having any stability in my life was too much. But I got clean in Land O'Lakes jail just this past year. I came to find a higher power. I figured I was tired of doing the same stuff. I attended a couple meetings in there, but mostly I spent a lot of time trying to figure out who my higher power was and how it, how to relate to it and all that stuff. And I got clean. There wasn't really much temptation in jail. There was some buck floating around, and I didn't want anything to do with it. I had lost any of the desire to want to continue down the road that I was down. I got out of jail on the 7th of last month. I got inducted into a halfway house out here in Newport Richey called the Koala House. And there's a lot of good guys that live in there. It's run by a great man. And, since I've been out, I haven't desired to drink. I've been around some people that have been drinking. It just doesn't do it for me anymore. I just have no desire to want to go back to that place I was. It was too dirty, it was too gross, and it just wasn't for me. And I found this group, I found a sponsor, and I just appreciate you guys accepting me in here and giving me this opportunity to share my inspiration, strength, and hope. And things have gotten so glorious for me. If you would have told me that I was going to be where I am today 3, 4, 5 months ago, even last month, I would have called you out on it, said you were full of it. But once you start working these steps and connecting with a higher power and getting to know your true self, things just seem to fall into place. And for you new guys, keep coming back. It really does work. I'm young. I'm only 23, but things are. I don't have to be the same way I was for the past 8, 9, 10, 12 years, and for that I'm thankful. And I'm also very thankful for you guys. Thanks for letting me speak, and I hope you guys got something from it.
Christy will now read the traditions.
My name is Chris Carpenter. I'm an alcoholic. These are 12 traditions. Short form. 1. Our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. 2. For our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself through our group conscience. Our leaders are trusted servants. They do not govern. 3. The only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. 4. Each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or AA as a whole. 5. Each group has but one primary purpose, to carry its message to the alcoholic who still suffers. 6. An AA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the AA name to any related facility or outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary purpose. 7. Every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. 8. Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. 9. AA as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. 10. Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues, hence the AA name ought never be drawn into public controversy. 11. Our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. 12. Anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities. Thanks.
And Sean will now do the chips.
Thank you. I'm Sean. I'm an alcoholic. This group has a tradition on handing out chips for various lengths of sobriety, so if you have the time, please come up and take a chip. And the first one we offer is a 24-hour chip. Next one we offer is a 1-month chip. And we have a gold chip for 2 months. We have a green chip for 3 months. Oh, Sarah. Three months, Chris? That's Sarah, everybody, and Chris. Then we have a blue chip for 6 months. And a purple chip for 9 months. And then we have, what is it here? We have a green poker chip for 1 year. And then we have a black poker chip for multiples. Come on up and get it. That was Pat with 16, that was Jim with 14, and Tom with 11. Thank you, guys.
Okay, let's see. I'm going to introduce our 45 minutes, or whatever, a 40-minute speaker, which is Jim, the demon.
Chris said I can eat donuts and drink coffee up here. I'm the only one. I'm Jim, and I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is the 8th of February, 1986. So I did bring my water, though. I got 26 years of uninterrupted sobriety. I got sober in Cleveland, Ohio. Well, suburb of Cleveland. Yep. Somebody has to get sober somewhere, so. I remember I talked to this one girl this one time. She was sober about 6 years. And she talked about her beginnings. It was, she said that she went to this meeting every day, 5 days a week, and the same 6 people were there at that meeting. And that's where she got her sobriety. And she said, yeah, she goes, in Reading, West Virginia. And I looked at her like, how can anybody get sober in Reading, West Virginia? And I started thinking about the moonshine I drank in West Virginia one time, you know. But that's the reality of this, is that when you start here, you know, no matter where you start to get sober at, that's where your foundation begins, you know. And if you start your foundation on a flat bottom, I'm talking like a bottom that you don't want to go and you don't want to dig anymore, and this is the place to start it, you know. I got to say, when I got down to Alcoholics Anonymous here in west coast of Florida, the first thing I wanted to do is change everything about it. And I have a friend that goes down, he lives down in Inglewood, and I went into his meeting, and they got this big sign up that says, "We don't care how you do it in Cleveland." And he's kind of happy about that sign. He says, you know, they put that up for me. I says, man, I thought they put that up for me, and I just got here, you know. My drinking started about when I was 13 years old, and the thing about drinking when I started at 13 years old is I came up with some decisions. And one decision was I was going to drink the rest of my life. The second decision was every chance that I had to drink, I was going to. And the third one was I was never going to be an alcoholic. And I saw alcoholics in my neighborhood. There was a lawyer who lived next door to my house. The guy was a real smart guy. He wrote books. He had law degrees. And he drank. And he got sober. And I can remember because he cut his grass and his windows opened up and his doors opened up and he sat on the front porch and he'd drink Coca-Colas and wave at all the neighbors, and neighbors would go by and say hello to him and stuff. And alcoholism was talked about in whispers in my neighborhood, like, oh, he's an alcoholic, you know. And then the guy started drinking again after about 3 months of being sober. He started drinking again, and the grass grew long. The windows got closed, the doors got shut, and we didn't see him anymore. And then somebody asked, you know, what happened to Mr. B? Where's he at? We haven't seen him in a while. And finally they took the police over there, and they broke open his door, and they found him. And he was found dead for 10 days. He was found dead in his house. And my thought was, that's not going to happen to me. That's just not going to happen to me. I'm not going to die like that. You know, dead is dead. I don't care if you found 10 days or 1 day. Dead is dead. And with all that information I had between my ears, you know, the thing was, it was normal for me to be walking to school with one of my buddies and splitting a bottle of wine. We had access to alcohol whenever we wanted it. We went to football games. We got drunk before we got there. We drank when we were there. We drank on the way home. Drinking and driving was a normal thing, and I don't condone that at all, but that's what we did. I mean, we used to get a couple cases of beer and get in the car and drive and put 250 miles an hour, 250 miles on the car in the night, just driving around the side roads, drinking beer and throwing cans out. And it seemed like a normal thing. You know, the reason why it seemed like a normal thing is because all the people I hung with did the same thing I did. When I got through junior high and high school, and after I got through high school, I made a pact with a guy before I got out of high school, long before I got to high school, that we wasn't going to do anything else. And when I got out of high school, it was a week to the day that I got out, that somebody I saw hitchhiking. We picked him up. He said, hey, you guys want to try one of these Colombian Marlboros? And we said, absolutely. And after that, you know, everything went together. And I got to say, I didn't look for, you know, I was looking for the perfect mix to be able to get to where I needed to do what I needed to do. And lots of times I passed that mark. Sometimes I never made that mark. But I never got to where I wanted to be. That was just the whole thing when it came to my drinking. A year after that, I landed my first time in jail. And I got out of jail after that, after it was 3 days. It was only 3 days, I think about that now. Oh, it was only 3 days. But the insanity about that is that when you land in jail the second time, and your thought doesn't come to your head, I got to stop what I'm doing. The thought come to my head was, I got through this one time, I can do this again. That's insanity, When you're trying to give up, when you give up your freedom for alcohol, that is insanity. I'm sorry, but I realize that today only because I'm an Alcoholics Anonymous. That's the whole reason why. And what's funny about that was that it was off of an Army base too. When I heard him talking about being in an Army base and getting arrested, or maybe we didn't get arrested, but I thought about me getting arrested in an Army base. But see, I was a civilian, and when it comes to the military, they do things to their people that they don't do to civilians. And one of the guys said to me, he said, I want you to, go over there and put your hands on the wall. And this other guy was sitting there, and he goes, you can't tell him that. And I'm like, oh, now I'm really in trouble. These guys are going to beat me to death with a billy club. And the guy looked at him, this sergeant looked at this guy, this private, and he said, what do you mean I can't do that? And he goes, he's a civilian, and all he needed to hear then was the music, I floated up above everybody, and I was saved, that's bottom line, I was saved. They didn't want anything to do with me. They wanted me to get off the base as quick as possible, and they just wanted me to get away from them and get out of their lives. That's what the U.S. Army said. And I wasn't even on the Army. I was going there because a friend was there, and we used to go on the base and be able to eat at the cafeteria for a couple of bucks, and that's the reason why we went there. And here I am getting popped, coming through it's so surreal, too, because, you see the guards standing there, and they're going like this, and they're waving the people through, and they saw us, and the guy stepped right in front of it and went like this, went, halt. And he reached for his gun, and I was like, this ain't good. This ain't good at all. And then, and I got out of that. Bottom line is I got out of that, and my thought is that I got to do something different. And so I did. I changed a lot of things in my life. My job, my friends, my drinking, went to different bars. And eventually, things started calming down again. That was the nice part about it. Things started calming down. I want to tell you about my last 6 months drinking. I would have every intention to go home after work. I worked from 4 to midnight, and my intention was to get in my car and drive home. My car had some type of cruise control that when I drove past the bar and made a right, and I pulled into my parking spot. And that parking spot, I could always tell it was a good night because that parking spot if it was open, it was going to be a good night. And I'd pull right into that parking spot, and I'd go into the bar, and I'd sit at the same bar stool I always sat at. And the barmaid, as I'm walking in, she'd see me walk in, and she'd set my beer up, pour a shot of tequila, and stand there and hold the bottle. And I'd drink down the tequila and sip a beer, and I'd give her a nod, and she'd pour another one. I'd drink that down, and after the third one, I'd drink the third one down. And if she'd pour a fourth one, she'd smile and turn and walk away. And that's the way the evening started every night. And I just thought that was normal drinking. That was just everyday social drinking because I was in a social crowd. And the insanity always followed that. It didn't take a while. It didn't take too long before the insanity would start following that. And what would happen is I'd go into this bar with every intention to talk to myself to say, I'm going to have myself a drink. And even now my brain says, have 2. Have 3 beers, a couple of shots. And my brain doesn't have the ability of saying, I'll have 1 and walk away from it. I did drink a beer in a bar one time. I walked into that bar. I drank a beer, bought the beer and drank it, and paid the barmaid and left her a tip, and got in my car, and I was so ecstatic because I drank 1 beer in this bar. I left there and went to another bar and got drunk. That's what I do. That's what I do. So I've always, and I actually accepted the fact that I could drink 1 beer in a bar, but I never added the part that I had this other thing go on afterwards, I walk into the bar and with all intentions to maybe, I wouldn't want to go to the bar. Then I'd go into the bar, and with all intentions just to be there for about 20 minutes or half an hour. 8 hours would pass. And I went home, and I'm married now, and my bride said to me, she said, "Where were you?" And I said, "Well, I stopped at the bar, have a couple of beers, saw some people, you know." She goes, "I really don't care if you go drinking at the bar. It's okay with me, but please do me a favor and pick up the phone and call me and let me know you're okay." I said, "Yeah, I can do that." And I'd walk into the bar, and I'd look at the phone, and I'd go, "Got to make a phone call." And I'd sit down at the bar, and I'd start drinking, and I'd look back at the phone, and I said, "Oh, it's 2 hours. I'll give her a call next hour." And I'd never call. And the same insanity happened time after time after time. It was like a game with myself. It's like I knew what the outcome was going to be. You walk through that door, you're going to get hit with a bat. Okay, I can get around it this time, And then when the guy wasn't there with the bat, I'd be looking for him, And so I turned around, I walk in. My bride came to me one day and said to me, she said, "Why don't you start taking care of yourself?" And I looked at her like she had 3 heads, like, "What are you talking about? I'm great. I weighed 126 pounds. I got my eyeballs sunk back in my head, I'm like 3% body fat because all I'm doing is drinking, I ain't eating anything, And I remember seeing a picture of every picture I had of myself, I had a beverage I had a beer in my hand, some kind of beer or some kind of drink in my hand, or one nearby, one within an arm's reach, I looked at this one picture and I said, "Oh, there's not a, I'm sober. Oh, yeah, there's not a beer in this." And I see right at the edge of the picture, there's this little green tint from a bottle. And I go, "Oh yeah, there's one." Every time. So, but I went to. I looked at her like she was crazy when she said that, and I said, "I'm fine. What are you picking on me for?" She says, "Well, why don't you go to the gym? Why don't you start working out? Because you always used to talk about working out." And I said, "Well, it's expensive." And she goes, "Well, why don't you quit smoking?" And I said, "I can quit smoking anytime I want." She looked at me, she said, "No, you can't." And I said, "Oh, yeah?" And that was just a challenge right there. I took a long drag. I smoked Camel non-filters. They were the best cigarette ever made. And I took this long drag and I put the cigarette out, blew the smoke out, looked at her and I said, "I quit." And I was like, oh my God, would I use an outside voice? I couldn't believe I said that. And I went through 7 days of physical withdrawal from nicotine and from that tobacco. 7 days. And I was hurting. And I wanted to smoke so bad, but it was my ego just wouldn't let me pick one up. And so I'm fighting my way through this. And about a week later, my bride comes to me and says, "I've got some things really messed up in my life, and I'm trying to figure some things out. So what I decided to do was move back to my mom's house so I can find myself." Those are her words exactly. And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's good, Great." So she packed up some stuff and moved back to her mom's house on the east side of Cleveland. And what she actually said was in code. What it was is, there's a significant other in my life. It's not you. And she went over to her mom's house, and my drinking took off. And then we would get together and date, and it was just a disaster. And we made through Christmas and New Year's. And around my birthday came up, and then when my birthday came up, she said, "Why don't you come over?" She said, "I got a present for you, and I want to move back home." And I said, "Oh my God, this is it. This is the answer." And I walked out of work that night at midnight, and my intentions were to get in my car and drive over to her house and pick her up and drive back home. And probably if that would have happened and I didn't pick up a drink, I probably wouldn't be here tonight. But I'm an alcoholic. I drink, I don't know. And I was walking out of that, and one of the guys could have been across the room, and they whispered it or they said it, but one of the guys said, "Come on." He said, "We'll take you across the street and buy you a drink." And I said, "No, I can't. I got to be someplace. It's important that I'm there." I told them I'm going to be there. And they said, "It's your birthday. You deserve it." And I looked at him and smiled and said, "You're right. I can drink one." And I sold myself that lie and went over there, and it was 2:45 in the morning. I'm putting the key in my car, and I'm thinking to myself, and I wasn't drunk and I wasn't sober, and I'm like, what happened? Why did that happen again? Why couldn't I just do what I said I was going to do? See, I didn't know I was powerless over alcohol. I didn't know my life was unmanageable. I didn't know that when alcohol said jump, I say how high, and I didn't know that. And it was just insanity going on in my life. And I'm trying to keep this thing to a low roar so that I don't look bad. That's what I wanted to do. I had the car, I had the job, I had everything all lined up, and it was like you're trying to keep all them plates spinning in the air, and it just ain't happening. Things are falling down around me, and I'm dying inside, and I don't know what to do. And so I go over to her house anyway, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do. And, this is when the spiritual things started happening in my life. And I'm talking about physical, spiritual things started going on with me. And I didn't understand it at the time, but I only realized it till after I got sober. Because what happened was I drank a pot of coffee when I was there, and I was trying to decide, my best thinking was to get into bed with her, and when she'd wake up in the morning, she'd find me lying there and say, "He's such a nice guy, he didn't wake me up." That was my whole intentions. And I'm standing next to the bed, and the only way I can explain this, because what happened was this. I had a spiritual experience. The alarm went off on the bed next to me at 4:30 in the morning. And my wife woke up and she said, "What's the alarm going off at 4:30 in the morning for?" And I said, "How should I know? I didn't set it." And she goes, "Well, I didn't set it at 4:30. And I said, "Well," and she said, "What are you doing here at 4:30 in the morning?" Well, don't ask me that, And I said, "Okay, I'll show you." And I left. Because that's what I do. I get confronted. It's either fight or flight. And I flight. Man, I was out of there. I just took off. And I went home. And I'm full of remorse and anger. And I wanted to do the right thing. But, alcohol just wouldn't let me at that time. It had control of me. And I didn't know what the problem was. So another God thing started happening. What happens, I let my dog out in the backyard, and my dog gets covered with mud, and I get sick and tired of wiping him off. And so I said, well, I know what I'll do. I'll take him out front so he won't get dirty. So I'm walking him out front, and I'm looking next to the house next to me, and there's a building there that says counseling. And I go inside and get a pen and paper, and I write down the phone number and call them up. And I'm supposed to walk into that place at 1 o'clock the next day for the appointment. And the reason why I looked at that place was maybe they could tell me what I could say to my wife to get her back. And that was my whole intentions. And I walked over to that place at 1:15. And then when the counselor asked me, she said, "Oh, your appointment was at 1 o'clock. It's 1:15. You're late. Is everything okay?" With real concern in her voice and real passion in her eyes when she said that. This drunk looked right at her and said, "Look, if you're going to pay me to be someplace on time, I'd be there on time. Since I'm paying you, if I choose to show up late, I will." And she went, "Oh, I see who I'm dealing with." But she didn't say that out loud. She just said, "Oh," And we went on to have the conversation, and after a few minutes, the first person in my life ever asked me this question. She said to me, "How much do you drink?" How much do I drink? Let me see. I can't tell her 30 cans of beer a night and a half a bottle of tequila. And it sounds a little excessive. Maybe the 24-pack, no, that's a little bit too much. 12-pack, no, she might think I have a problem. 8-pack, no, those are high in alcohol. There might be a problem there. She might think that I might be an alcoholic. I looked her dead in the eye. I said, a 6-pack a day. And she went, "Oh." And she signed down the paper and wrote something down. And I said, "Oh, that's the answer. That's the answer, a 6-pack a day." She said, "Look," she says, "I got a schedule that's full for the next 2 months, and I could bring you in here the next 2 months, but I really believe that you need to speak to somebody sooner than that. And I've got this other counselor I think you should talk to. He's a really great guy. He's easy to talk to. Would you like to have his number?" I said, "Yeah, sure." So she gives me his number, and I get a hold of him. I set up the appointment for the next week. I go to see him, and sure enough, the same question he asked me was, "How much do you drink?" And I said, a 6-pack a day. And he said to me, "I don't know if you have a problem or not, but let me give you a suggestion. Maybe you go check out this Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. If you got a problem, you got a place to get an answer. And if you don't have a problem, hey, what's the big deal? You went to a meeting, no blood, no foul." And I looked at him, I said, "Yeah, I could do that." I came back to see him the week after that, and when he said to me, he says, "Did you go to the meeting?" Oh, yeah, I was there. 5, 6 people, it wasn't a lot of people there. A Super Bowl weekend, Sunday, and he just kind of like nodded and smiled, and we went on with the conversation. And I thought, I got over the guy, See, what I didn't know is that this guy is sober in Alcoholics Anonymous for 12 years. The meeting he sent me to was in Middleburg Heights, Ohio, at the hospital, 8 o'clock. There's 250 people in the room. There could be 4 foot of snow outside, 250 people in those rooms. And I'm telling him, 5, 6 people, Super Bowl weekend, no big deal, We started talking about how much it was going to cost, because I'm seeing that this is starting to bother my paycheck, and it's starting to bother my drinking, because I don't have the money to buy drinks the way I used to. And so I said, well, is there a place I can go and like pay on a sliding scale? And he said, yeah. He says, there's this other place. And he set me up with this counselor. And I called this counselor up. And here come to find out I was one of my customers at work. Just an easy lady to talk to. And I went in to go see her. But you see, before I showed up to go see her, I knew that she was going to ask me how much I drank, and I knew she was going to ask me if I went to an AA meeting, because all these counselors were like talking to each other. You know, they got each other's numbers, and oh yeah, ask him this question, see what he says. This is what he told me. And you know, it's all about me now. You know, so I ended up. I knew that there was a meeting on that Sunday night, and so what I did was I took $200 out of the bank and put it in my pocket, and it's February 1st, 1986. There's a lot of snow on the ground, and I'm thinking to myself, there ain't going to be nobody here. And when I turned the corner in the corridor going to the cafeteria at this hospital, there's 40 people in the hallway. So quickly I went into the bathroom and I switched my money from my one pocket to my other pocket so I could keep my left hand on my money so nobody would steal it. And I worked my way back into the crowd again, and I had to shake a couple of hands, and I got met by the AA greeter. Now, if you don't know who they are, they're the ones just like the Walmart greeters, except they don't have vests. And this greeter comes blasting up out of the crowd at me and gets right into my face and says, hey, coffee's right over there. Grab yourself a cup. Meeting's going to start in about 2 minutes. Grab yourself a seat. And turned around and walked away, and I went, oh, he must be the greeter. And I'm looking around, and I don't know what to do, so I get this cup of coffee, and I'm looking at these people, and I'm trying to figure out who the alcoholics are. Because these people don't look like alcoholics. I've drank with alcoholics, and none of these people in this place look like alcoholics. There's a few guys up front that got these garbs on and stuff, and they're sitting there kind of like, you know, weaving and bobbing. And I said, oh, those must be the alcoholics. And I'm looking around going, man, there's a lot of people supporting them guys, you know. Some guy stood up and said, when he started reading I sat down. When I sat down, I'm looking around, and the guy I'm sitting next to is the guy I used to drink with 10 years before that. And I said, what are you doing here? And he says, I decided to go to some AA meetings, man. I was, really? How many you been to? He goes, 2. And I'm thinking, no wonder I quit drinking with you. And he said, how many meetings you been to? And I said, oh, it's my first meeting. He says, oh, these guys are going to talk, they're going to say some stuff, and then they're going to read some stuff. And then after the meeting's over, you can go up front and get your court slip. I'm thinking, court slip? Just in case I need one of those. Good place to know, you know. Some guy stood up and said, my name's Gary, co-alcoholic. And I'm going, a co-alcoholic? Maybe I could be one of those. Maybe because that's not as bad as an alcoholic. It's almost, you know, kind of like you're checking things out. See, what the guy stood up now, Gary's got like 30 years, I think. Yeah, he's got 30 years of sobriety now. And what he did is he stood up and he said, my name is Gary Cole. I'm an alcoholic. I hear co-alcoholic, you know, and I think it's something else. The meeting, at the end of the meeting, these guys talked. I have no idea what they said. And at the end of the meeting, the president stood up and said, are there any new people here? First day, first week? And I'm sitting there, and my pal next to me, he hits me in the arm. He says, put your hand up. And I went, what for? Too late, man. This guy's got eagle eyes. He spotted me, and he goes, hey, will you stand up and introduce yourself? And I looked at him, I went, no, I'm good. And he stood there and looked at me, and he said, will you stand up and tell us who you are? And I looked at him, and I said, no, man, I'm good. Just go on with your meeting. And he smiled, and he said, please, stand up and give us your name. And I went, oh, I'm going to kick this guy's ass next time. So I stood up, and with every intention of giving somebody else's name, my mouth opened up, and I said, yeah, my name's Jim. And I said, I can't believe I just told them my name. And I sat down, and I was like flustered. They said, coffee end. Everybody pushed their chairs around me. I'm freaking out, pushing these chairs out of the way. I just want to get out of this place. These people are nuts. I swear the chairs just magically parted. Some guy 3 days older than dirt floated up to me and said, hey, happy sobriety, you know, 90 meetings, 90 days. I'm like, this guy escaped from 2 West. We're in a psych ward, you know. I just get me out of here, you know. And finally, the guy looked just enough away when somebody called his name, and I went over like about 3 chairs, and man, I hit the door and jumped in my car, drove to the bar, sat at a different stool, watched the doors, both of the doors. Waited for the AA police to come and get me, and they didn't. I got away from them, you know. And that night was a night I went into a major blackout, and I came to the next day at my house. You wake up with that charge of electricity that goes through you from a phone ringing. Feels like your heart just stopped. Your throat feels like it just locked up. You're reaching around like, where am I? What's going on? I ain't going to answer the phone because, I'm just so full of fear. I can't answer the phone. I start looking down to see if I got any blood on me, to see what clothes I'm wearing. I got the same clothes I did the night before. I look at the clock and it's 4:15, and I'm supposed to be to work at 4 o'clock, and I'm 45 minutes away from work. And I'm panicked, and I don't know what to do. And I can't call off of work because I just can't call off of work because they might think I have a problem. So I pick up the phone and I call my boss and I tell him, hey, I had a flat tire again. And he said, get in here as quick as you can because I got to leave at 5. And I says, all right. And then I stood up and walked across the room because my dog was sitting there next to the wall, and I knew to walk over to, he's my last friend. And I walked over to him and he turned his head and showed me his teeth. My heart sunk. And I just said, well, I grabbed the 3 cans of beer I had left and put them in my car and started driving west, driving over to the east side. And when I finally got to work, I wiped my hands on my tires and showed my boss, I had to change a tire. My hands are dirty. Got to keep them lives on tack there. And finally I got to that night, about 11:30 that night, I realized I was going back to the bar, and I didn't want to go back to the bar, but I didn't know where else to go. So I walked into the bar and I physically drank less. And I got in my car and drove home, and I did the same thing on Tuesday. And when I saw the counselor on Wednesday, I asked her about it, and she said, did you go to the AA meeting? I went, yeah. She goes, what'd you think? And I said, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what to think. She says, what are you going to do? And I said, there's a meeting Saturday night I'm going to. And I went back to the bar on Thursday night and then Friday night. And Friday night I got out of work early. I didn't have to go to work. Only had to work like a half a day. And I'm sitting there in the bar and I drank a shot of beer. And I waited for the glow and nothing happened. And I said to the guy with me that was sitting there, and I said to him, I said, this stuff ain't working. And he said, we're going to this other bar. The barmaids dance on tables and they swing from chandeliers. And I said, no, man, you don't understand. This stuff is not working. I'm going home. And I went home. And I went to sleep that night. And I woke up the next morning, and I didn't have to go to work that day. And I knew the AA meeting was that night. And the only thing I could remember was, don't drink for a day. So I didn't drink for that one day. The meeting started at 9 o'clock. As much as I know about Alcoholics Anonymous is this. Everybody's anonymous. Nobody knows each other. The earliest you can get to a meeting is 10 minutes before the meeting starts. You don't talk to each other. So I said, I was freaking out. I just didn't know what else to do, and I wanted to drink so bad. So I went to a restaurant and got something to eat. There was a guy sitting at the end of the counter, and I looked at the clock. It's 10 minutes to 9. I jumped up, paid my bill, and shot over to this church. And when I got to this church, I'm looking at the doorway, and the doorway is like zooming away from me. And I'm thinking to myself, I didn't drink today. Maybe I'm okay. Maybe I've been drinking less all week long. Maybe I don't have a problem. At that moment, this guy pulls in that was sitting at the end of the counter. He jumps out of his car, and I didn't recognize him until he got out, and I seen it was the same guy. And he said to me, he says, I was going to go get drunk tonight, but I decided to go to AA instead. And I said to him, where this question came from was, how long have you been sober? And he said, 8 days. Quickly I took an inventory and I realized that I had not stayed sober. I have not been sober since I started drinking at the age of 13 years old for 8 days. I was always drinking sometime between then. He said, we're going to go inside. I'm going to shake everybody's hand. I'm going to introduce you to everybody. And I said, you are out of your mind. But I said that inside. I didn't tell him out loud because he was bigger than me and I was afraid I was going to really make him mad. So we went inside and we went around and shook everybody's hand. And they said, is there any new people here? And I put my hand up. And I stood up. I said, my name's Jim. And I didn't jump right into this thing and say, oh yeah, I'm an alcoholic. Welcome me. Oh, I don't want to be no alcoholic, God, I didn't think that was my problem. I just kept going to meetings, and all I heard was, don't drink and go to meetings. And I used to stand next to people getting chewed out by their sponsors, whoever they were, you know. And I'd listen, I'd be like within earshot, drinking my coffee, listening to them and thinking, you keep going to the bar, man, you're going to get drunk. And I'd be, okay, don't go to the bar. And I wouldn't get a sponsor because I didn't know what a sponsor was, but I certainly wouldn't get one because I didn't need any help. I didn't want any help. I don't want your help. You know, I could do this on my own. Yeah. Finally, one of the guys that he was working at this 7-Eleven all night long, and I would go over to his 7-Eleven from midnight to 2:30 in the morning and play pinball and drink coffee, and then I'd go home after that because the bars were closed. And he said, he's had a meeting with me one night, and he looks over and he says, you got a sponsor yet? And I said, man, I'd love to hear what you know. No, I haven't got a sponsor. He goes, go talk to that guy, and he points to this guy. Big guy, walking across the room, got a blonde afro and cowboy boots, and I'm looking at him. So I walk over and start talking to this guy and give him my phone number, and he gives me his phone number, and I leave. And then Thursday night I went to another meeting, and Friday night he's at this meeting I was at, and he said to me, you want to go have coffee? I went, yeah, sure, let's go have coffee. I know where to go. Don't drink, go to Bob's. That's what it was. So I go get this cup of coffee, and I'm sitting there talking with this guy, and he says to me, he starts talking about steps and sobriety and living life on life's terms, and easy does it, and all these different, and the big book. And I looked at him and I said, hey, let me ask you a question. He goes, what? I go, you think you could be my sponsor? And he looked at me, he goes, I am your sponsor. I go, you are? He goes, you asked me on Wednesday. I did. So what did you say? He said, I said yes. I was like, okay, good. He went home and told his wife, he says, this guy ain't going to make it. He's done. He's cooked. He started running me to meetings, and what he would do was he'd call me up and he'd say, I'll see you at 8 o'clock. 2 minutes, gotcha. I'll see you at 8 o'clock. And I would be ready at 5 minutes to 8, and I'd walk outside, and he'd be sitting in the driveway, and he'd say, what the hell took you? And I'd be like, what do you mean? I'm here. And so we'd go to a meeting, and then when he pulled into my driveway to drop me off at night, he'd say to me, go straight home. And I'd be in my driveway, and I looked at him, I'm thinking, this guy's really cooked, you know, and he did this for about 2 weeks, and after 2 weeks, it really pissed me off, and so I looked at him and I said, look, I said, you pull in my driveway, I'm 10 feet from my door, then you tell me, go straight home. I am home, what do you want me to do? And he looked at me and smiled, he goes, yeah, he goes, but some alcoholics don't go straight home. I was like, oh, okay. I got a chance to go on a 12-step call with him. And we got called by this guy. We get over there. This guy's passed out. We talked to his wife a little bit, and we left. And we didn't take the guy to a meeting. And I said to him, well, are we going to go back and get him? He says, no. He says, he ain't done yet. I go, what? He goes, he ain't done drinking. He goes, are you done drinking? And I never got asked that question before. And I think I was sober about, 8 months, 9 months. I said, yeah, I think I am. And he says, you never have to pick up another drink again if you don't want to. He said, you're guaranteed another drunk, though. But you're not guaranteed another sobriety. He says, if you got this sobriety, treat it like a gift. It's the present. Take care of it. Savor it. Pass it to somebody else and come back and get another gift tomorrow. He says, sobriety is going to become the most important thing in your life every day. It'll become more important than your birthday. He says, you'll find yourself in relationships with people that you're going to have to make a choice. Am I going to stay sober or am I going to stay with this person? And unfortunately, you might have to walk away from that person or job or whatever because it's going to matter about your own sobriety. He says, the decisions you're going to be able to make, the neat part about it is you don't have to do it by yourself. He says, that's what's nice about Alcoholics Anonymous. He says, you're never going to fight this disease by yourself on your own. He says, but two of us together, he says, you got a chance. my sponsor's still alive up north, and I came down here, and when I got, then I'll take about 30 more seconds, and I'll finish up. When I got down here, I said to, I got my sponsor. I didn't have my sponsor. I had my sponsor about 1,200 miles away, and I tell you, sponsor about 1,200 miles away is just about right. And I call him up, and how you doing? Oh man, it's great. It's sunny down here, the beach. Yeah, everything's great, and I'm freaking out because I got to find a job and I got to find a place to live, and I got a place to live, and I'm still kind of wondering what I'm going to do, and no car. And then one of these guys helped me move, and he said to me, he says, and it was around Christmas time. He goes, "Hey, I got something for you," and he hands me this gift, and I went, "Oh, cool, man! My first Christmas gift in Florida. This is awesome. I'll open it on Christmas." He says, "No, open it now." So I open it up. I go, "It's a Magic 8 Ball." He goes, "Yeah, use that as a sponsor until you get one." I shook this thing up and I said, "What step am I on?" I flipped it over and it said, "Ask me again later." And I picked up my phone. I called this guy I know down in St. Pete Beach, and I says, "I need a sponsor, And I got him since I got down here. And it was about 2 years I had him as a sponsor, and I asked him, "How long you been sober?" And he says, 21 years. I went, 21 years? I'm thinking, I got more sobriety than this, and this guy's like rockets ahead of me, And I'm thinking, but God never makes a mistake when He puts the people together. If you're new here, which you are, welcome, It gets better. It gets better. If you put down today all your dreams and aspirations on a piece of paper and open them up from a year from now, you will sell yourself short. Absolutely, you will sell yourself short. And you open that up 5 years from this day and stay sober all through this time, you will freak out how much you've gotten, and you didn't even know to ask for. This is a God-given place, and as my sponsor says, I love Alcoholics Anonymous. Love every one of you too, and thank you for allowing me to share tonight. Appreciate it.